The story begins in an unforgiving, snowy field deep in the heart of the Wild West, where a ruthless female outlaw named Bill is riding her horse. Along the trail, her eyes lock onto a young woman named Lula, who is standing nearby. Shortly after, Bill arrives at a local church right in the middle of a funeral service. The entire congregation takes a terrified step back. Everyone knows exactly how lethal Bill is. No one dares to move as they watch her coldly steal a jacket straight off the corpse in the coffin. Meanwhile, Lula returns home to her brother, Jack, who reveals the tragic news that a sudden plague has taken their parents' lives. Lula looks down at their bodies, completely consumed by grief. Moments later, their grandfather Caleb arrives, and the family gathers to pray for their lost loved ones. To stop the deadly disease from spreading, they make the painful choice to set their own home ablaze before hitting the trail for Texas to seek refuge at their aunt's house. Elsewhere, in a ghost town, Bill reunites with her gang. They head toward a river crossing to catch a ferry, only to find that Caleb's family has already paid the transit fare. Bill confronts Caleb over the spot on the ferry and begins aggressively harassing Lula. Stepping up to protect his granddaughter, Caleb draws his firearm, prompting the entire outlaw gang to raise their weapons. Suddenly, the ferry's guiding rope snaps, and a panicked Caleb pulls the trigger. The bullet grazes Bill's head. Infuriated, Bill fires back twice, killing Caleb on the spot. The gang brutally knocks Jack unconscious and kidnaps Lula, hitting the trail again. Before long, the outlaws ride into a shop in Sylvester town to execute a robbery. The terrified shopkeeper pulls a gun but freezes in pure fear, forced to obey Bill's twisted orders. Bill mocks the man, forcing him to suck candy straight from her palm. Outside, a bound Lula spots the shopkeeper's young son and desperately yells for him to run. Hearing her screams, the gang spins around. The shopkeeper takes his chance and fires, hitting one of the gangsters in the hand. Bill responds instantly, blasting the shopkeeper directly in the head. Lula tries to make a break for it but slips into the thick mud. When the shopkeeper's son rushes out to help her, the gang shoots him down without mercy. Bill walks out, rounds up Lula, and drags her back. Down by the river, Jack finally regains consciousness. He looks around only to find that both his sister and their wagon are completely gone. He tries to pray over his grandfather's body, but the overwhelming grief breaks him, and he dissolves into tears. Determined to find his sister, Jack pushes forward and reaches Sylvester, where a chaotic mob has gathered in the middle of the road. The townspeople have captured a man they believe is Bill and are preparing to hang him on the spot for the shopkeeper's murder. Thinking this prisoner might be a member of the gang, Jack desperately tries to get close to question him about Lula's whereabouts. But the crowd is completely blinded by fury, and Jack is violently knocked down into the dirt amidst the scuffle. When he looks up from the ground, he notices a bizarre abduction unfolding in the chaos. A man named Jimmy Sue is being snatched by Hector and forced into a wagon. Because of the deafening uproar from the mob, no one hears Jack's cries for help. In the center of the town square, the rope drops, and the captured man is hanged. Jack frantically tries to squeeze a final answer out of the dying man, but an angry member of the mob strikes Jack down, knocking him completely unconscious. Deep in the wilderness, the outlaw gang stops to let their horses rest. A defiant Lula warns them that her brother is coming to save her, but Bill casually breaks her spirit, lying that Jack is already dead. While Bill is distracted dressing her injured hand, Lula seizes a moment of opportunity and slips a firearm off one of the horses. However, fear paralyzes her, and she hesitates to pull the trigger. Bill easily wrests the weapon back. To punish her for the sudden scare, Bill fiercely strikes Lula in the head twice with the weapon, teaching her a brutal lesson. The next morning, Jack finally comes to his senses, horrified to find himself waking up right beneath the dangling corpse of the hanged man. The local gravedigger, Eustace, is standing over him and cracks that if Jack hadn't opened his eyes right then, he would have buried him alive alongside the others. Eustace then drops a valuable lead, mentioning that the deadly gang was spotted riding hard toward the north. Jack immediately tries to secure transportation to give chase, but the wagon he finds belongs to Eustace and his bounty hunter partner, Reginald Jones. Later, inside the local tavern, Jones demands his payment for digging graves, but a corrupt local officer forces him to hand over half the cash while ruthlessly mocking Jones's short stature. Cut to later on the trail, where Jones and his seasoned tracking team determine that the outlaws have temporarily holed up in a nearby town. Jones boldly enters a local saloon under the guise of buying a bottle of whiskey to gather intelligence on their targets. But the moment he steps up to the counter, he finds himself face to face with Bill. Bill immediately begins mocking his height, but Jones doesn't flinch. He fires back with a sharp insult about the hideous scars cutting across Bill's face. Bill is genuinely taken aback. Usually, people either cower in fear or ask intrusive questions about her appearance. Seeing that Jones possesses absolute nerves of steel, Bill secretly begins to respect the bounty hunter just a little bit. Jones reads Bill just as easily. He knows exactly what it's like to be judged entirely by your appearance. Softening her guard, Bill strikes up a surprisingly friendly conversation and even hands Jones a piece of candy before stepping out. Outside the tavern, Lula overhears the gang members muttering that Bill is wasting her time talking to that strange little man. Peering through a small hole in the tavern wall, Jones catches sight of Lula. He intentionally turns to the tavern owner and shouts Jack's name at the top of his lungs. Lula hears the name, instantly realizing her brother is alive and hunting for her. Outside, Eustace and the rest of the tracking team are heavily armed, hiding behind the tree-line and waiting for a signal. But Jones holds his fire and refuses to tip them off, knowing that Lula is directly in the line of fire. As they regroup, Jones spots Jimmy Sue, the man who was snatched back in Sylvester, and slips up behind him, pinning him down. Jones uses a calm voice to de-escalate the tension, explaining to Jimmy exactly what happened to his brother. Once Jimmy reveals that he is also hunting Bill's crew, he agrees to join forces with the bounty hunters to exact his own revenge. Meanwhile, Bill rides up to a remote church and brutally assaults the priest in a fit of pure rage. That evening, Jones's tracking team sets up camp in a nearby town to rest. Amidst the heavy stress of the trail, Jack and Jimmy find comfort in each other's company, sharing a quiet, intimate moment. The next morning, the team discovers that Bill has burned the church to the ground. The priest is severely burned, but clinging to life. He gasps out a warning, telling them that the gang is heading straight toward the treacherous thicket, and warns that Lula won't survive the place. He also reveals a dark secret about Bill's past. The horrific scars on Bill's face were carved by her own heartless mother, who viewed her child as a curse for her sins. In retaliation, a young Bill locked her mother inside their home and torched it. The priest shudders, admitting he can still hear her dying screams. Hearing this, a panicked Jack begs Jimmy to move faster. But Jones steps in, sharply reminding Jack that he is the leader of this crew and they move on his command. Jack snaps, taunting the bounty hunter for treating him like a child, and insults his combat skills with a harsh slur. Infuriated, Jones throws some cash at Jimmy and makes a crude, highly offensive proposition just to spite Jack. Jack loses his mind and lunges at Jones. But Jones is a seasoned fighter. He easily counters the attack, slams Jack into the dirt, and draws his firearm. Jimmy immediately throws herself into the middle of the standoff, shouting that everyone is only fighting because they are terrified and don't know how to process their fear. She says she knows the sheer terror Lula is feeling right now, and adds that she knows Jones isn't chasing this gang for a bounty, but out of genuine compassion. She demands they put an end to this stupid argument over who is in charge and work together. Eustace backs her up completely. Relenting under her words, Jones finally lowers his gun and offers Jimmy a sincere apology. Deep in the wilderness, Lula looks up at Bill and asks a chilling question. Is she planning to kill her? Bill quietly admits she doesn't know, showing a strange, sudden flash of leniency toward her. Exhausted and terrified, she even rests her head on Bill's knees as they travel. Before long, Jones's tracking team begins losing the Outlaws' trail. The heavy falling snow has completely wiped away all tracks on the ground. Refusing to throw in the towel, they press forward into the dense, frozen thicket. That night, they pitch camp, and Jones and Jack finally settle their differences. Jones opens up about his past, revealing that after his mother took her own life, his father sold him to a traveling circus. He tells Jack he still misses his family, reassuring him that his sister will never forget the brother who came to save her. The next morning, the team locates the gang holed up inside a remote wilderness cabin. Jones wants to wait for the tactical advantage, but Malachi, fueled by an uncontrollable thirst for revenge, breaks formation and creeps toward an outdoor latrine. When a gangster steps outside, Malachi lunges into an attack, but the outlaw quickly counters, turning the tables and stabbing Malachi repeatedly with a blade. Jack tries to rush out to help, but Jones pins him down to keep their position from being compromised. Refusing to watch from the sidelines, Jimmy ignores Jones's orders and fires a clean shot, taking the gangster down for good. Eustace declares they have to strike first, so the team advances, ordering Jimmy to hold the rear line. Before dying, the wounded gangster manages to shout a warning to the rest of the cabin. A deafening firefight erupts from both sides. While Lula ducks for cover, Bill acts completely unbothered, ignoring the chaotic gun battle around her. Using the crossfire as cover, Jones flanks the property and reaches the back of the cabin. Lula spots him and slips out the rear door, but Bill is right on her heels and opens fire. She grabs Lula, dragging her deep into the blinding snow of the thicket. Jack breaks cover and sprints into the tree line after his sister, ignoring Jones's desperate shouts to stay back. At the same time, a surviving outlaw ambushes Jimmy. Jimmy gets a shot off, and the two struggle violently into the snowbank. Jimmy gains the upper hand, but the outlaw drives a knife deep into her chest. He gasps out a few final words in his native tongue, and both of them collapse dead in the snow. Back at the cabin, Jones rushes to Eustace, who has been critically wounded by gunfire. Thinking fast, Jones rigs a rifle with a scope. Eustace bravely steps out into the open to act as bait, drawing an enemy out into the clearing. Jones lines up his shot, but the outlaw clips him, sending both men crashing into the snow in a desperate hand-to-hand struggle. Meanwhile, deep in the thicket, Jack pursues Bill, guided only by the sound of the killer's echoing laughter. The moment the deafening crack of a gunshot echoes through the trees, Jack dives for cover behind a thick trunk. Bill uses the shadows of the dark thicket to relentlessly taunt the young man, tracking his movements. Seizing her opportunity, Bill fires, striking Jack cleanly in the shoulder. Jack desperately tries to force himself back onto his feet, but Bill fires a second round, taking out his other shoulder and dropping him completely. Lula sprints out of the brush, throwing herself over her wounded brother. Bill stands over them, ready to deliver the final blow, but as she pulls the trigger, her firearm clicks empty. In a surge of survival instinct, Lula strikes Bill across the face, digging her nails into her raw scars. Bill merely laughs at the attempt, tossing her aside like a ragdoll. She slides a hunting knife from her belt, pinning her down to slit her throat. Suddenly, Bill's vision begins to blur as a bullet tears through the wilderness from a distance. Jones had lined up his shot from afar, driving around directly into Bill's head. The ruthless female killer collapses into the snow, dead. Lula and Jack share a desperate, tearful embrace, but Jack is completely paralyzed by his severe injuries. He loses all strength, his arms falling limp, forcing Lula into an absolute meltdown of tears. With the threat eliminated, a battered Jones stumbles through the blood-soaked clearing to find Eustace. The seasoned gravedigger is clinging to her final breaths, a peaceful smile stretching across her face. She whispers that she has zero regrets and is just glad to see Bill finally brought down. The two longtime companions share a heartbreaking final conversation beneath the breaking winter sky. Looking up at the morning sunlight, Eustace closes her eyes for the last time. Determined to collect the price on the monster's head, Lula uses a blade to sever Bill's head from her body. Jones helps her pack up the grim cargo, and together, they ride out to the nearest sheriff's station. The local lawman is completely stunned by the bounty hunter's legendary feat and wants to blast Jones's name across the front pages. But Jones firmly refuses, insisting that the identity of the person who put Bill down must stay completely secret. After processing the claim, both Jones and Lula are relieved to find out that the massive financial reward on the outlaw's head is completely legitimate. With fresh clothes on their backs and a sturdy new wagon hitched up, Lula looks at Jones, admitting she has no one left in this harsh world, and begs the bounty hunter to ride with her. Turning their backs on the bloodshed, the two survivors return to Caleb's homestead to build a peaceful future together. Right behind the house, they dig a proper grave for Jack, honoring his ultimate sacrifice. Standing over the soil, Lula clutches her blade tight against her chest with absolute pride, a permanent reminder that she fought through her paralyzing terror and won her war against fear. If this gritty, bone-chilling tale of frontier survival, ultimate sacrifice, and absolute revenge kept your eyes glued to the screen, make sure to slam that subscribe button right now. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another cinematic breakdown, smash that like button, and drop a comment below letting me know your favorite part of the movie. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one, right here on Cinemaned.